Hello and welcome to DTC Podcast. I'm Eric Dick. On today's bonus episode this week, we're covering a topic that we've actually never covered before on the podcast, and that's the world of inventory management. Today, we're chatting with Pauline from Finale Inventory about all the different ways that businesses can streamline their inventory management systems to avoid common pitfalls like overstocking, stockouts, and other issues to really help improve your bottom line at a time when every brand is looking for just that. So whether you're a small startup or looking to scale, I think there'll be lots of insights about inventory management in this podcast that you can take from. Hope you enjoy it. On with the show.
If your ad campaign took up more than you thought, how flexible, how scalable is your company to get more inventory in, to make changes, etc.? E-commerce moves so fast, and if companies, if teams, if brands, if sellers, if they can't move as fast as the customer is going, that's where they get behind, and that's where the competition steps in. You need to find a program that's real time. How fast are your syncs to sales channels, to fulfillment partners, to whatever? There are services out here that are like an hour, 2 hours, 24 hours. In the world of e-com, 24 hours is basically a week, especially if you're in Q4. So teams need this information stat.
Pauline, welcome to the DTC Podcast. Excited to talk about the wonderful world of inventory today. Can you start us off by explaining why Finale Inventory was built and what it specializes in?
Yeah, absolutely. So Finale Inventory was built to help e-commerce sellers manage their inventory. Pretty self-explanatory, but really the big pain points we're solving are overselling, lack of visibility, right? We hear from sellers all the time that they come and they're like, we just have no idea what we have, what we don't have. When are we going to run out of stock next? When are we going to get in trouble? And even, getting down to what should I reorder? When should we reorder? Providing those insights to sellers in a really easy way.
And it's just given, every brand that I talk to on this podcast now is looking for ways to improve efficiency. Starting with the actual product and having full knowledge of what you have, where it is, has got to be a big part of it. Because what are the biggest pain points that brands experience when they're not managing their inventory correctly?
It ranges the gamut, right? To ordering the wrong things, and then you have overstocked, not ordering enough of the right things, and then you're overselling, obviously. It comes down to, you talk about efficiency, like efficiency in your warehouse in terms of how are our warehouses operating? How are people picking and packing? Are we at picking 5 orders a day for one guy? Or is one guy picking 500 orders a day, right? Like that visibility. Sure, you have people come in and they do their punch card, but how efficient really is your team is the question. Other things is financials. Inventory management, we hold, I say we, but the inventory piece of a business is where all the revenue, all the cash flow is really going in the stock, in the inventory of the product to be able to have the rest of the team, right? Have the business, sell something. And so not having visibility even into what are the financials around the stock. All of that product sitting in your warehouse is 80 to 90% of your expense. But we're finding that, I think there's a stat out there that says only 35% of that is well managed. So what is going on to the other 65% of the inventory? People have no clue. They come in a lot of times with clipboards and Excel spreadsheets, and we totally understand that that's how many businesses start. But as businesses are growing and you're getting 100 orders a day, 200, 500, 1,000 orders a day plus, right? It becomes so much more difficult to handle all of the processes that go around with it.
Another thing I've heard, we're a kind of an ad-focused podcast here to some extent. And whenever you're advertising a specific SKU or there's nothing worse than advertising specific SKUs that may be doing well on the ad side. But when you get to the website, you can't actually fulfill on those orders. I know that's a simple thing, but that's when I see big issue on the ad side.
100%. Yeah, right. And so even the ad team not knowing what products to promote because they're not sure of the counts in the warehouse, right? I think that we can promote the Black Yetis because it's summertime and, we want to be able to, not have a promotion on the lighter colors, whatever. I don't know. But what happens if you actually have fewer Yeti cups in your Black Yeti cups in your warehouse than you think, You've just run this big promotion, you're driving all of this traffic, all of this attention, and then they're out of stock. Not a great experience. Not a great experience at all.
No, and a big waste of money. Can you give me an example? You don't have to name the brand, but give me an example of a brand who came in, talk about what their state of their inventory was like pre-finale and then post-finale once you guys had helped them sort it out, and then what impacts were felt.
Sure. So there's a brand that came to us at roughly $650,000 annually. I would say their inventory was kind of in a place where it was scattered. So they had different teams working on it, different warehouses, etc. But again, talking about the whole reorder piece, they weren't sure of their cost of goods sold. They weren't sure, are they ordering the right things? Are they not? And through scalability efforts, sure, the reordering piece, but also even kind of what we're talking about before, all the teams having the same information that was able to help them grow. We grew them from 650 to 6.5 to $65 million. And so maybe I should have, I would have said the name outside of those metrics. But anyway, it is a very, very famous manly brand. You've seen them on the WWE. I don't know.
It's the E now. They admitted it was all entertainment, so they switched it to entertainment.
Thank you for saying me. You've seen their name on the mat. That's what I'll say.
Very cool.
And that's the thing, really about like the scalable effort, right? It's not just that one thing is helping in like a silo. It's creating workflows for the team that provides them the same real-time visibility across from purchasing what is in the warehouse, what's inbound shipment even, right? Inbound to your warehouse, inbound to FBA, mind you. What's on the shelf, what has been sold, what's committed stock, like every single step, the full team can have that visibility, because if they can't, then, the left hand is not talking to the right hand, and that's where mistakes happen.
And so it lets you create efficiencies. The same thing that, if you're tracking down to the employee level, it creates huge internal efficiencies and then helps you avoid external inefficiencies. I think back to a podcast I did recently with our Amazon team, and Amazon's just unveiled a number of fees that kind of have gone into their ecosystem. And I think inventory management, or there was a specific one related to having your inventory not managed properly. So it's another like very direct example of like why, by creating efficiencies in your inventory, you can save costs down the line.
100%. Amazon actually rolled out, I want to say it's like 4 different fees related to inventory. So they have inbound placement fee, the historical views of inventory you have to have within 28 days of your historical sales between 2 different time periods. There's also like long-term storage fee changes. So not only are they starting sooner now, they used to begin at about a year. Now they're kicking in at 6 months. So if the inventory at FBA is stored there longer than this 6-month period as per the plan, the fee kicks in. And again, I think there's one more around inventory. But yeah, it's like if you send us too little, there's a fee, too much fee, the wrong location fee, like just across the board, there are fees. And I'm not gonna lie, I've been on like a lot of sides of e-commerce, and normally the listing side is what everyone gets really excited about. And now we're like, yes, finally, you see why inventory is so important. It's so important to a business, even beyond the fees.
Yeah, like I think of inventory planning. I'm talking to people on the podcast every week now, and they're already starting to think about getting fresh eyeballs into their funnels so that by the time, Q4 and rolls around, that they've got this hugely filled funnel, and they really have to plan really precisely, like how much inventory are they going to need. So yes. How does your system help people plan in terms of the ebbs and flows of a year? In terms of inventory management?
Great question. So I'll talk about it first about how Amazon looks at it, and then I'll kind of talk around how Finale does it. So what Finale is looking for is that 28 days of historical sales daily volume. So they're looking at it at 28 days and at 90 days. And you have to have at least a month's worth of inventory at any of those 2 timeframes. So they are looking at historical 90-day trends, basically. What Finale gives you is all of your sales history. So when you talk about seasonality, ebbs and flows, yes, Finale can help you look at that same 30, 60, 90-day period. It can reflect it Amazon specific, FBA, FBM. It can reflect your Shopify or any of your other sales channels together, separately, whatever. So you know that. And then further, when you speak to seasonal trends, you can look back at like quarterly trends. How is this trending this quarter to last quarter? And then in terms of Q4, how are things trending compared to last year? The data is available so that sellers can see that and understand what are they up against, right? So maybe you had, I keep going back to the Yeti cups because you got a sticker in the background there. So that's what I keep going for. If your Yeti cups last year, right, you're now we're in the winter. Great. Q4 black Yeti cups are in. If you saw your sales trend last year was up trending like 15%, but you're seeing it kick in sooner this year, right? You can compare that and do the calculation for your inventory ordering early accordingly. And again, we talk about the amount, but also like the timeliness to get it in now is going to be really important to get everything into FBA with enough time to have it, sorted through, competition to get it in there, right, is going to be, I think, even more intense with these fees.
What would you say are the most important key metrics or KPIs that e-commerce sellers should be thinking about when it comes to inventory management?
Great question. A couple of things come to mind. COGS, so their cost of goods sold. It's really important because, again, speaking about advertising and promotions, you don't know how much you can promo that item without knowing how much are you actually making and need to carve out on that item. So COGS all the way for profitability. That sales volume, that sales velocity is also really important. So how much is selling, how much is not? Again, because then is this a good product to be selling? Should we change this up? Should we, if it's not selling, get creative, right? Kit it, bundle it, make it go away with something else, but don't let it sit on your shelves, taking up precious space. Those are top two. And then from there, I would also say in terms of your team, again, like that efficiency, who's picking 200 products an hour, who's picking 20 products an hour? Because you want to make the most of, squeeze every penny out of your team, of your product, of your warehouse, of your brand. And so I would look at those three things.
And then, how does that actually translate to the dashboard? So, say I sign up for Finale. I was just talking with someone who has their triple whale up over here. They've got their meta ads up over on this. Yeah. Depends on how many monitors you have. But if I've got Finale up on a monitor, what am I looking at on screen on a sort of day-to-day basis?
I would say there are three main views. So one is the sales order screen. We have sales, volume, velocity. We have items per sale. So like counts and all that. We have distribution across the country. Where are your products selling? So from like a distribution warehouse perspective, perhaps planning that way. The reorder screen is huge. So not gonna lie, folks rave about the ability, how easy Finale makes it to know what am I running low on? What am I at risk of overselling on? And then getting ahead of it. So, setting your counts, including those timeframes, the buffer timeframes, to get ahead of all of that is big. So again, sales screen, the reorder screen. And I would say the third screen is just general like stock product management, making sure basically that like everything that you plan to sell is actually up and in Finale, kind of a basics one, but important.
I think about the spreadsheet approach to managing inventory, how much info goes in there. When someone signs up with Finale, like how much of an what does integration look like? Getting your system maybe from a spreadsheet into your system.
I don't know if it could be easier. Like I don't know of a better way to say it. We're all kind of used to uploading a CSV, making sure the column headers are aligned, like having a template, right? Like no worries with Finale. You literally copy it on your spreadsheet and paste it into Finale. Control C, Control V, you're in. It's incredible.
That's it.
There are other ways, obviously, to connect your integrations, pull it in from whatever platform, marketplace, take your pick, sync that over that way as well. The whole point is software should be helpful, right? If you need a 5-week long training process about all of the different things it does and how to do it, this is gonna be pretty complicated. Finale is great because it just kind of makes sense And we talked before about the left hand talking to the right hand, like the advertising person talking to the warehouse. Finale just does it in between. So like this piece of data, we know that you need this for purchase orders. Oh, look, it's populated in the purchase order. So it's not like we make you toggle back and forth. We just like help do the calculations. We help with the insights. There are notifications. Sorry, I got off topic. But the point is, getting products loaded into Finale is a pretty easy accomplishment.
And I from our pre-conversation, you were like, I'm always interested in the way the SaaS ecosystem is parsed out, essentially. And so I was aware of this term that you brought up before, which was the enterprise resource planning platforms, as ERP platforms, which
ERPs.
traditionally have inventory as part of that. But as you were describing how easy it is to get set up on Finale, my mind was going to like potentially how complicated getting ERPs kind of connected. So talk to me about where Finale fits in sort of the ERP SaaS ecosystem and what you think.
Yeah, really interesting. So we come into ERP conversations with obviously our larger sellers, right? Those who are in the 30, 40, 50 million area. And I get it. It makes sense. First of all, I feel like ERPs were kind of seen as back in the day as like the badge of honor, right? Like you've made it to needing an ERP and like, that's great. I will say it's different these days. And maybe it was back then and they didn't have the solutions. So what we see is that, especially for growing companies, let's say that they fall within the like million to 20, 30, chances are you want to still be growing to 50, 70, 100 million, etc. For growing companies, you're still figuring out what works for you. And what that means is you're testing different things, you're trying new things, you're testing sales channels, you're testing ad strategies, right? And for those folks who want to go to an ERP, we see that they have a very hard time between the cost it takes to pursue an ERP. It's like easily 6 figures just to get started, not even to maintain it month to month, which is more like candidly 5 figures. But then it's also the time, because each and every sales channel is a separate integration, right? So each and every fulfillment partner is a separate technical integration. So it's just such a high lift to go ERP, to combine everything. And that's the thing, is for brands and sellers who are growing, you're going to go and you're going to be basically locked in to one way of doing things because of the huge lift it took to get there from a cost and labor perspective, right? Companies tend to take anywhere between 4 to 6 months or more to get started on their ERP. And so I will say, conversely, for an IMS, we talk about like copy paste, talk about just like have the sync. The point is, especially for e-commerce sellers, find a tool that's intended for your industry. And, we have out of the box native integrations, sales channels, whatever, ShipStation, QBO, whatever it is, but we understand what this seller needs, and it just comes on a silver platter. We often
with white gloves, even.
White gloves, silver platter. That's right. Butler and everything.
Nice.
Our experience. Yeah. We have sellers, honestly, who leave and we're like, okay, like understand you're growing. You want to, pursue things that, may be better for your company. We're just going to keep your data sitting tight here. Like just in case. Not gonna lie, like 7 out of 10 times, they're coming back to stay with Finale after going the ERP route because they either couldn't get off the ground or just found it to be overly cumbersome to do so and just like gave up and came back.
What are some trends that you're kind of seeing in the e-commerce space, and how do those relate to what you're seeing in the world of inventory management?
I will say that TikTok has changed a lot. Social shopping in that way, the values of TikTok are very different categories on TikTok, right? So beauty brands under $30, exploding. Really anything under $30 is doing very well on TikTok. Amazon's having a harder time with that. It's interesting now. We're seeing that different channels have different values for different things, be it your web store, your marketplace, or again, social selling, which is basically just saying TikTok at this point. Instagram as well, Meta too. But that everything is kind of falling into it has its place. if you will.
Mm.
And so being able to have those multiple channels all in one platform, really helpful. Being able to see the data of the results of all those channels, again, really, really important, because teams that are just looking at individual channels, individual silos, this is where they're coming into problems, is because, again, they don't know what their coworker who's managing other channel, other screen, other tab they're doing. And the company as a whole is losing out when they can't work kind of together on the product side.
And the threshold for brands going omni-channel is just like lowering every day, I think. Whether you've got your TikTok shops, you've got Meta shops, you've got brands more, every D2C brand wants to go retail, every retail brand wants to go D2C.
Exactly.
So I can just envision all of this on a spreadsheet getting pretty hairy pretty quick. Or on a big ERP having to duplicate a lot of like massive infrastructure across each of these selling channels.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so things are getting easier. Things are also getting harder too, right? So again, these Amazon fees, which warehouse do I send it? When do I send it? Like, blah, blah, blah. And it's like the calculations are getting so tricky because you need to have the accurate information and like yesterday, right? That whole like idiom, the information and getting it right is so key because the risk is so high in terms of, sure, there's fees, but like getting kicked off of Amazon, don't want to do that. Losing your customers and your sales, don't want to lose that. Or flip side, getting it wrong and then spending more money on customer service, spending more money to handle returns, spending more money to handle that whole process. That's where we're seeing companies. Yes, it's easier. And I'm glad, by the way, tangent, when you brought up omnichannel, you really brought in the brick and mortar piece because we are seeing a lot of that too. But kind of going back to how it all really fits together, the complication for these growing brands is huge. New channels, new warehouses, new marketplaces, new whatever, new products, new expansion. Managing all of that with spreadsheets and clipboards is just, it's getting impossible. To stay afloat is the key.
And because there's all these pressures on brands, they're also looking, I imagine, to just get more efficient with their inventory. One of the trends you mentioned before was a lot are focusing on just-in-time kind of inventory management, which is going to be more efficient, but it's going to take more to manage that effectively, right?
Correct. Yes. And then depending on your just-in-time, calculations, how much buffer have you given yourself? Did you do just-in-time and you're like right up against it, And are you able to quickly react if anything? If your ad campaign took up more than you thought, how flexible, how quickly can your company adapt? How scalable is your company to get more inventory in, to make changes, etc.? It's like e-commerce moves so fast. And if companies, if teams, if brands, if sellers, if they can't move as fast as the customer is going, that's where they get behind. And that's where the competition steps in.
So we've got lots of brand owners listening to this podcast. Which are the ones, like if you had to sort of call out the exact kind of customer that would see the biggest impact? You mentioned a brand that was sub 1 million that got onto you guys and you guys have helped them grow to 65 million. But call out like who the exact kind of brand that'll benefit most from your product.
Sure, yeah. D2C brands with their own warehouse who are either already multi-channel or looking to go multi-channel is key. Because again, it just adds the complexity and not knowing who, what, when, and where of your products. And then single sales channel, you very much understand sales velocity. Once you go multi-channel, that becomes much more difficult to understand. And then again, that's where profitability comes in, right? What are your commissions fees here? What is the advertising plan like there? It all comes down to the profitability, right? We want to talk about sales and like promotions and like listings all day. But if it's not profitable, then like it's all for naught.
Contribution margin, right? Everything down to the contribution margin. That's
100%.
The word of 2024, I think.
I'm with you. Yes, we'll get new hats that say contribution margin.
Contribution margin goes up, goes this way. Yeah, and I just get flashbacks of just some times where I've tried to manage very complex processes in spreadsheets, and just the amount of hair that I've lost kind of from that process. Any other sort of hot takes about this inventory management space?
Hot takes. Let's see. Everything moves fast, right? You need to find a program that's real time. There are services out here, and you should ask, right? How fast are your syncs to sales channels, to fulfillment partners, to whatever. We know that there are services out here that are like an hour, 2 hours, 24 hours. In the world of e-com, 24 hours is basically a week, especially if you're in Q4. So like teams need this information stat. That's a big one.
Do you see brands already? Like I hear them talking about it on the podcast right now, but are brands on Finale already kind of making moves in terms of planning what how big their Q4 is going to be?
Good question. I think it's a little early now. Generally speaking, folks tend to do it a little bit more into Q2, Q3 than like start of Q2 right now. They do need to make their orders, get them in, etc. I think more so when we're like May, June, will we see a little bit more of that planning happen. And then obviously orders going in, candidly, like brands will test a lot out on Prime Day, Prime Week, whatever, Marketplace, Sweeps Week. The whole industry is now just like around that time frame, and then put in final orders after that. So I would say end of July, early August is when orders are kind of being placed, going in, coming back in order to get then into distribution warehouses ahead of Q4.
Good timing for this podcast then, because that gives people enough time to start making decisions about jumping to new platforms, which they don't want to maybe do in the heat of that Q3, Q4 period.
Yep. Absolutely. You got it.
Cool. Well, in the name of that, what if we have listeners who were thinking about wanting to know more, what do you suggest they do?
We would love to talk to you. Come on over to finaleinventory.com. We have actually a new FBA product shipping out. So we've had FBA, but we're doing updates to it. And so we are actually offering sellers from the DTC podcast free Prime month. So talk to Finale, get set up. To your point, Eric, you don't want to do it in Q4, do it ahead of Q4. And we can offer you guys free Amazon for the month of, basically July. So come and get it.
Just tell them D2C or Eric sent you.
That's right. D2C 24. D2C Eric. Let's do D2C Eric. Great.
D2C Eric. Perfect. I've got a note here about your Platinum Plus plan. What does a Platinum Plus plan entail?
Perfect. Thank you for bringing this up. We talked before about white glove and silver platter, especially for those brands who are looking to get this done fast and easily. It's the tell us your goals, kind of show us what's under the hood, and we'll put the car together for you, right? So we can set up the integrations, we can load your products, we can make sure that your workflows, your reports, your dashboards are all set up. We will train your team, etc. And also for those who are doing barcoding, which a lot of times at that level they are, we can come out to your location, train your team, go through warehouse setups, help you set up the whole barcoding system. And it's just like a hands-off, turnkey inventory implementation.
Very cool. Pauline, thank you for coming on the D2C podcast today. This is an area that I have not, that I'm always love learning. And this was a new area for me. Thank you for your takes. I appreciate it.
Same. I look forward to having a hat.
Oh, we'll send one out. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can do that right now at directtoconsumer.co. I'm Eric Dick, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.